The crimson warning lights cast skeletal shadows across the Council's most classified archive, as archivist Velkris Nethmore pulled the final sealed record from its quantum vault. For 800 years, he had catalogued the military failures of lesser species, documenting their predictable surrenders, their pathetic resistance movements, their inevitable assimilation into the Galactic Council's expanding dominion. But this damned file, defied every pattern he had ever witnessed in his millennium of service. Subject: Sol 3. Designation: Earth. Total invasion attempts: 47. Success rate: 0%. The words burned across his visual cortex like acid. Nethmore's secondary hearts began racing as his chitinous fingers traced the impossible statistics. No world in recorded galactic history had achieved such a perfect failure rate. Not the warrior monks of Kethvar, who held their mountain fortresses for 6 months before surrender. Not the hive minds of Zeruf Prime, who managed a full year of coordinated resistance. Not even the crystal beings of Yothmar, who required 3 separate campaigns before accepting Council sovereignty. Earth had broken every single battle plan. The Council's greatest strategic minds had devised across a millennium of attempts. The archive chamber stretched endlessly into darkness, its walls lined with quantum storage matrices containing the military histories of 14,000 conquered worlds. Each crystalline matrix held the complete record of another species' final defeat, another civilization's last breath before joining the Council's galactic empire. But Earth's matrix pulsed with an angry red warning signal that Nethmore had never seen before. Perpetual failure classification. His talons clicked nervously against the polished surface of the examination table as he activated the first chronological record. The holographic display materialized with painful clarity, showing the pristine confidence of the Veltari Empire's invasion planners 913 years ago. Their preliminary reconnaissance reports glowed with the arrogant certainty that had preceded 46 subsequent disasters. Initial survey report: Sowell 3 presents minimal resistance potential, declared War Commander Thexai's recorded briefing to the Veltari High Command. Primitive bipedal mammals utilizing Stone and Bronze Age technology. Social structure indicates tribal warfare patterns with significant potential for divide and conquer strategies. Population density suggests easy resource exploitation post-conquest. Estimated occupation timeline: 72 standard hours maximum. The hologram showed Thexai's impressive form, his battle-scarred carapace gleaming with the ceremonial markings of 17 successful planetary conquests. Behind him, tactical displays presented Earth as a simple blue marble orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The humans appeared as scattered dots of primitive civilization, their largest settlements barely qualifying as villages by galactic standards. Their military technology consisted of sharpened metal implements and crude projectile weapons powered by chemical combustion. By every metric the Veltari had developed over millennia of successful expansion, Earth should have fallen within days. But the follow-up reports told a very different story. Day 4 combat assessment. The humans refused to acknowledge our technological superiority. Thexai's voice had lost its initial confidence, taking on the strained tone of a commander facing unexpected complications. Instead of surrendering upon demonstration of our energy weapons, they are studying our discharge patterns. Multiple warrior groups have been observed collecting fragments of our weapon impacts and experimenting with crude reproductions using their primitive metallurgy. This behavior pattern has not been documented in any previous conquest scenario. Nethmore paused the playback, his compound eyes focusing on the tactical data streaming beside Thexai's image. The human response curves showed learning acceleration rates that exceeded every known biological limit. Within 96 hours of first contact, human settlements were producing metal projectiles that somehow interfered with Veltari energy weapons. Not just random experimentation, systematic analysis and targeted countermeasure development. Day 12. Emergency status update. Impossible situation developing. Thex AI's composure had completely cracked. Human settlements that should have been annihilated are still broadcasting defiance signals. They appear to be using our own energy signatures to mask their communications and coordinate resistance activities. Our intelligence division cannot explain how they decoded our frequency modulation protocols so quickly. Standard linguistic analysis suggests they should require at least 6 months to understand our basic command structure. The hologram flickered as Nethmore's claws accidentally triggered an annotation overlay. The Veltari intelligence analysis revealed something that made his mandibles click with nervous energy. The humans weren't just copying alien technology, they were improving it. Crude human reproductions of Veltari energy weapons showed 37% higher efficiency ratings than the originals. Their communication systems, built from salvaged alien components and primitive electronics, demonstrated encryption capabilities that the Veltari couldn't break. Day 27 Final Combat Report. The humans have stopped running. Thex AI's final transmission carried the hollow tone of absolute defeat. They're hunting us. 3 of my finest warriors were found yesterday, killed with sharpened metal implements that somehow penetrated their battle armor. The metallurgy should be impossible. Their iron-based alloys cannot achieve the molecular density required to breach our defensive systems. Yet the weapons they've created are cutting through our protection like it was mere fabric. The holographic display zoomed in on the recovered human weapons. Nethmore's expertise in xenotechnology allowed him to recognize the impossible craftsmanship immediately. The humans had taken basic iron and somehow forged it into configurations that created localized structural weaknesses in Veltari armor. Not through advanced understanding of material science, but through intuitive recognition of how the alien protection systems functioned. They had identified vulnerable points that the Veltari's own engineers had never discovered. The humans are learning faster than our combat algorithms can adapt, Thex AI continued, his voice breaking with exhaustion and fear. They've developed tactics specifically designed to counter our standard engagement protocols. When we establish perimeter defenses, they attack from directions we didn't know existed. When we attempt orbital bombardment, they somehow predict our targeting solutions and evacuate before impact. It's as if they've been preparing for US specifically, as if they knew we were coming and studied our methods in advance. The tactical analysis data confirmed Thex AI's desperate observations. Human military units exhibited learning patterns that violated every known principle of battlefield psychology. Instead of breaking under sustained pressure, they consolidated. Small groups would disappear into Earth's varied terrain, then emerge weeks later with entirely new fighting techniques specifically calibrated to counter Veltari battle doctrines. Most disturbing, their adaptation speed was accelerating. Early engagements required human forces several days to develop effective countermeasures. By the end of the campaign, they were adapting within hours. Request immediate evacuation authorization. Thex AI's final words echoed through the archive chamber with the weight of historical significance. These humans, they don't fight like any species we've encountered in 43 previous conquest campaigns. They fight like they've been preparing for advanced warfare their entire evolutionary history. I've lost 67% of my force strength, and the survivors are requesting psychological rehabilitation. Retreat authorization code, absolute failure. The hologram dissolved, leaving Nethmore staring at the statistical summary that had haunted him for months. The Veltari Empire's defeat at Earth had been so complete, so psychologically devastating, that they had never attempted another expansion campaign. A civilization that had conquered 43 worlds across 7 star systems had been broken by a single encounter with primitive humans. But the second wave documentation promised even more disturbing revelation. Admiral Corex Hassan of the Hegemony Fleet had arrived at Earth 2 generations after the Veltari disaster, expecting to find primitive spear throwers still struggling with Bronze Age technology. His reconnaissance reports had identified several concerning anomalies: scattered debris from the previous invasion attempt, human settlements showing unexplained technological advancement, and energy signatures that suggested the natives had somehow integrated alien technology into their primitive infrastructure. The humans appear to have salvaged and reverse-engineered Veltari equipment, Corex Hassan reported to the Hegemony War Council. However, our analysis indicates this should present no significant threat. Veltari technology is 3 generations behind current hegemony standards. Any human attempts to weaponize salvaged equipment should prove ineffective against our current defensive systems. The Hegemony Fleet represented the pinnacle of military engineering from the galaxy's most advanced technological civilization. Their vessels incorporated self-repairing hull matrices, quantum-entangled targeting systems, and energy weapons that could adjust their output in real time to counter any known defensive measure. Corex Hassan commanded 200 warships crewed by the finest military minds the Hegemony had produced in 5,000 years of expansion. Yet the humans were waiting for them with weapons that shouldn't have existed. First engagement analysis reveals impossible technical developments. Corex Hassan's initial combat report reflected growing alarm and confusion. The humans have developed projectile weapons that utilize Veltari power cells, but somehow they've increased the energy output by 37% while reducing the weapon size by half. This should be mathematically impossible with their understanding of physics and materials science. Our technical analysis division cannot explain how they achieved these improvements using primitive manufacturing techniques. Nethmore accessed the technical specifications captured during the Second Wave campaign. The human weapons were masterpieces of intuitive engineering. They had taken Veltari energy storage systems and reconfigured them using principles that hegemony scientists couldn't understand. Not because the principles were too advanced, but because they were too simple. The humans had solved complex energy efficiency problems using approaches so basic that sophisticated alien minds couldn't recognize their elegance. Day 8. Strategic Assessment. Human military doctrine exhibits unprecedented adaptive characteristics. Corex Hassan's science officer reported during a fleet-wide briefing. They're not just resisting our advance, they're using our attack patterns as training exercises. Every engagement provides them with new data about our capabilities, which they immediately incorporate into improved defensive strategies. Standard conquest models predict enemy adaptation rates of 2 to 5% per engagement cycle. Human forces are showing adaptation rates exceeding 40% per engagement. The holographic battlespace recreations showed the impossible reality of human tactical evolution. In early encounters, hegemony forces achieved easy victories using standard suppression techniques. Human defenders fell back in disorganized retreat, their primitive weapons proving ineffective against advanced shielding and armor systems. But within days, the same human units returned with modified tactics that specifically targeted the weak points of hegemony equipment. The humans have developed electromagnetic pulse weapons using modified communication equipment, Corex Hassan's tactical division reported with barely concealed panic. These devices are disabling our quantum targeting systems and forcing our ships to rely on manual guidance protocols. The sophistication required to build EMP generators should be beyond their technological capacity, yet they're producing them in quantities that suggest mass manufacturing capability. More disturbing were the reports of human infiltration activities. Despite possessing no faster-than-light travel capability, no advanced stealth technology, and no energy-based weapon systems, human operatives were somehow boarding hegemony vessels and conducting sabotage operations. Not random destruction, but but precisely targeted attacks that demonstrated intimate knowledge of hegemony ship design and operational procedures. Security alert! Human operative captured aboard research vessel Keth Moran, Security Chief Vextai reported during an emergency command briefing. Subject was armed with a kinetic projectile weapon constructed from our own quantum processors and hull plating materials. When discharged, this primitive device somehow bypassed our dimensional barriers and impacted the target with exponentially increased momentum. The human operative weaponized our own technology using principles our engineers cannot duplicate. The interrogation recordings of the captured human revealed something even more chilling than their technical capabilities. The infiltration attempts weren't desperate random actions. They were part of a systematic intelligence-gathering operation that demonstrated comprehensive understanding of hegemony fleet organization and security protocols. How did your species acquire detailed specifications for our vessel configurations and defensive systems? Korexasan demanded during the recorded interrogation session. We watched you, the human operative replied, with the calm confidence of someone stating an obvious fact. Everything you do follows patterns, your ship formations, your tactical responses, your crew rotation schedules, your command decision trees. You're predictable. Impossible, Korexasan's interrogation specialist interjected. Our security protocols are generated by quantum uncertainty matrices. Random variables cannot be predicted using primitive observational techniques. Your quantum uncertainty matrices have exploitable biases in their randomization algorithms. The human continued with disturbing precision. We identified the mathematical progressions after observing 17 separate fleet engagements. Your random security changes follow predictable patterns that any human mathematician could extrapolate. Your supposedly unbreakable encryption uses frequency modulations that create harmonic resonances detectable by acoustic analysis equipment. Nethmore paused the playback to review the technical analysis performed after this interrogation. Hegemony mathematicians had spent months verifying the human's claims and discovered to their absolute horror that the primitive human was completely correct. The galaxy's most advanced civilization had been using random security systems that contained unconscious biases, patterns that had been invisible to their own specialists but apparently obvious to human observers using crude mathematical analysis. The human operative demonstrated predictive accuracy exceeding 93% regarding our tactical responses and fleet movements, Korexasan's final assessment report concluded. This level of strategic analysis capability should require computational resources equivalent to our Central Command AI systems. Yet the subject appears to be performing these calculations using biological neural networks and primitive mathematical techniques. Recommendation: immediate withdrawal from Sol 3 operational theater. This species poses an unacceptable security threat to hegemony military doctrine. The second wave evacuation had been even more humiliating than the Veltari retreat. Human forces had not only repelled the invasion, they had captured significant quantities of hegemony technology and taken prisoner several high-ranking officers who had voluntarily defected after becoming convinced that human strategic superiority made resistance futile. The third wave documentation revealed the Council's escalation to psychological warfare specialists. If humans couldn't be conquered through technological superiority, perhaps they could be broken mentally. The Mind Weavers of Voshan specialized in species-specific psychological manipulation, crafting terror campaigns precisely calibrated to shatter the sanity of their targets through carefully orchestrated trauma induction. Chief Mindweaver Dekthara had arrived at Earth with absolute confidence in her craft. Her psychological assessment reports identified humans as classic mammalian social organisms with predictable vulnerabilities: fear of death, separation anxiety, territorial insecurity, and hierarchical status dependence. The Mindweaver arsenal included precisely targeted phobia induction, memory manipulation, reality distortion, and social cohesion disruption techniques that had successfully broken 41 different species across 2 millennia of operation. Mammalian psychology follows entirely predictable patterns, Decathara declared to the Council's Strategic Warfare Division. Fear responses, social bonding mechanisms, and territorial behaviors can be systematically exploited to create cascading psychological collapse. We will break their collective sanity before their military forces ever engage in direct combat. Estimated timeline for complete psychological breakdown, 6 to 8 weeks maximum. The psychological assault began with the classic Mindweaver approach. Carefully orchestrated terror campaigns designed to undermine human confidence in their reality and their security. Abduction scenarios calculated to create paranoia and helplessness. Unexplained phenomena engineered to convince targets that their environment had become fundamentally unpredictable and dangerous. Strange lights in their skies, missing time episodes, implanted memories of traumatic alien encounters. The humans should have descended into collective madness within weeks. Instead, they did something that no other species had ever done in Mindweaver operational history. They got angry. Not the chaotic, destructive anger that led to random violence and social collapse, but the cold, calculating fury of a species that had recognized they were being deliberately manipulated and had decided to fight back using their attackers' own methods against them. Psychological warfare effectiveness reports indicate systematic resistance to standard manipulation protocols, Decathara's field operatives reported after the first month of operations. Instead of succumbing to induced paranoia, human subjects are using paranoid thinking patterns as defensive mechanisms against mental intrusion. They've developed what they call conspiracy theories that accurately identify and counter 17 different psychological manipulation techniques we've never used on any other species. How do they know methodologies that aren't in their historical experience? The conspiracy theories weren't random paranoid delusions. They were sophisticated analytical frameworks that treated psychological manipulation as a form of warfare requiring specific countermeasures. Human paranoids were predicting Mindweaver tactics with 93% accuracy and developing defense protocols that neutralize psychological attacks before they could take effect. Subject demonstrates unprecedented resistance to standard neural manipulation procedures, reported field operative Kelvash after attempting to implant false memories in a captured human test subject. When we attempt to insert artificial memory constructs, the subject's mind automatically generates multiple contradictory versions of the same event, then uses logical analysis to identify which versions contain impossible elements. This defensive mechanism appears to be unconscious and universal among the species. Human psychological defense systems were operating on principles that Mindweaver specialists couldn't understand. Instead of accepting implanted memories as genuine experiences, human minds treated all memories as potentially unreliable data, requiring verification against multiple sources. They had developed internal skepticism protocols that questioned the authenticity of their own experiences, a psychological adaptation that made them essentially immune to false memory implantation. The humans are implementing coordinated counterintelligence operations using psychological manipulation techniques they should not possess, Decathara reported to the Council with growing panic. They've established communication networks specifically designed to resist mental infiltration, created redundant verification systems for distinguishing between genuine and artificial experiences, and developed what they call disinformation campaigns that are somehow affecting our own operatives. The most disturbing development occurred when humans began experimenting with their own psychological warfare capabilities. Using knowledge gained from defending against Mindweaver attacks, they developed primitive but effective mental manipulation techniques. These crude methods shouldn't have affected sophisticated alien minds, but somehow they were causing massive disruption among Mindweaver personnel. Emergency extraction request for Infiltration Team 7, Decathara's field commander transmitted during the campaign's final week. The humans are broadcasting coordinated false information designed to create confusion among our forces. They've convinced 30% of our operatives that they're actually working for human intelligence agencies rather than the Mindweaver Corps. This should be impossible given our species' superior cognitive architecture and psychological training, yet our own agents are requesting extraction because they believe they've been compromised by human counterintelligence operations. The psychological warfare campaign concluded with more Mindweaver operatives requiring mental rehabilitation than human targets showing psychological damage. Decathara's final report to the Council carried implications that challenged fundamental assumptions about human mental architecture. Species exhibit psychological resilience characteristics that exceed our modeling parameters by over 300%. Her classification summary stated, "Human minds appear to be evolutionarily optimized for resisting external mental manipulation. Cognitive structures suggest previous exposure to advanced psychological warfare techniques, but archaeological analysis confirms no evidence of prior alien contact." Conclusion: this species has developed psychological defenses against threats that do not exist in their historical environment. The fourth wave marked the Council's escalation to biotechnological warfare. The Plague Shapers of Morden represented the galaxy's most advanced genetic engineering capabilities, specialists in creating species-specific pathogens that could eliminate target populations while leaving their ecosystems intact for subsequent colonization. Their biological weapons arsenal included viruses, bacteria, and genetic modification agents that had successfully cleared 48 worlds of indigenous life forms. Bioweapon designer Velkara spent 3 standard years crafting the perfect human killer, an engineered virus that exploited weaknesses in mammalian respiratory systems, spread through their social contact patterns, and included genetic triggers specifically calibrated to human DNA markers. The pathogen was tested on captured human specimens with 100% fatality rates within 14 standard days of exposure. Species termination probability 99.7%, Velkara announced to the Council's Biowarfare Division. Pathogen characteristics include airborne transmission, 14-day incubation period, respiratory system failure cascade, and genetic specificity preventing cross-species contamination. Recommended deployment: atmospheric aerosol distribution over major population centers. Estimated timeline for complete planetary sterilization, 6 months maximum. The bioweapon was deployed exactly according to specifications. Atmospheric distribution monitors confirmed global pathogen dispersal within 48 hours. Human population centers showed initial infection rates matching all projection models. Medical facilities reported symptoms consistent with the designed progression pattern. Everything proceeded according to plan for exactly 17 days. Then something impossible happened. The humans stopped dying. Mortality rate analysis indicates systematic deviation from projected pathogen effectiveness, Velkara reported to an emergency session of the Biowarfare Division. Initial casualties occurred as predicted, but death rates are dropping exponentially rather than following the designed infection curve. It appears human medical science is adapting to our weapon faster than the weapon can adapt to human biology. Human medical researchers had not only identified the artificial nature of the plague within days of its release, but they had reverse-engineered its genetic structure and developed multiple treatment protocols that neutralized the pathogen's primary kill mechanisms. More troubling, they had somehow created vaccines for biological weapons variants that the modern hadn't even developed yet. Human immune response analysis reveals impossible anticipatory characteristics, Velkara's emergency field reports documented. Their biological defense systems are preparing for attack vectors that shouldn't be possible with their current level of genetic understanding. It's as if their species has previous experience with advanced bio-warfare techniques from multiple different technological traditions. The most disturbing discovery came when modern xenobiologists analyzed human survivors of the plague attack. Instead of being weakened by the biological assault, the recovered population showed enhanced resistance to all forms of artificial pathogenic agents. The bioweapon had essentially provided humanity with comprehensive training in advanced biological defense, making them stronger rather than eliminating them. Post-infection analysis of human genetic modifications reveals systematic immune system enhancement, Velkara's science team reported with barely concealed terror. The original pathogen appears to have triggered dormant adaptive mechanisms in human DNA that were not present in our pre-attack genetic surveys. Survivors demonstrate resistance to biological attack methods that we have not yet attempted, suggesting their immune systems are preparing for threats that do not currently exist. Subject species displays unprecedented adaptive immune responses to artificial biological agents. Velkara's final classification report concluded with the authority of absolute defeat. Genetic analysis indicates evolutionary optimization for surviving deliberate biological warfare attacks. No known natural selection pressure could account for these adaptation characteristics. Recommendation: immediate cessation of biological warfare operations against Sol-3. This species appears to be specifically designed to neutralize biological weapons through exposure-based adaptation. The fifth wave brought the Council's most advanced technology specialists to bear against Earth's impossible defenses. Tech Dominarch Nexaval of the Silicon Collective arrived with weapons platforms that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, gravitational manipulators capable of crushing planets into compressed matter, and quantum disruptors that could unweave the fundamental forces holding atomic structures together. His fleet represented 50,000 years of accumulated technological advancement from 14 different galactic civilizations. Primitive human technology cannot comprehend weapon systems that operate beyond their three-dimensional understanding, Nexaval declared to the Silicon Collective's Strategic Command. We will demonstrate our supremacy through displays of power so overwhelming that surrender becomes their only logical response. If they refuse surrender, we will simply remove their planet from existence and eliminate the problem permanently. The demonstration began with the casual destruction of Earth's moon as an unambiguous warning to human leadership. Gravitational manipulation beams simply erased Luna from existence, leaving no debris, no trace that it had ever occupied orbital space around Earth. The message was clear and mathematically precise: surrender immediately or watch your entire world suffer the same instantaneous fate. The humans responded by building better telescopes. Within weeks of the moon's destruction, human observatories were tracking every vessel in Nexaval's fleet, using detection methods that shouldn't have been able to perceive 17-dimensional objects. They had identified the gravitational manipulation technology and begun experimenting with crude reproductions of the gravitational distortion effect using modified chemical rockets and crystalline matrix amplifiers. Impossible technological development detected in human military installations, Nexaval's reconnaissance division reported with growing alarm. The humans have somehow created localized gravitational distortions using modified chemical propulsion systems and primitive electromagnetic field generators. The technique is incredibly inefficient and should be impossible with their materials science limitations, yet they've achieved measurable gravitational manipulation effects. They're learning to bend space-time using Bronze Age metallurgy and Stone Age computational systems. More alarming were the systematic human infiltration attempts against Silicon collective vessels. Despite possessing no faster-than-light travel capability, no advanced stealth technology, and no energy-based weapon systems, human operatives were somehow boarding ships that existed partially outside normal space-time and stealing classified technology. Not just stealing, systematically analyzing, reverse engineering, and improving upon designs that had required millennia of research to develop. Security breach report. Human operative captured aboard research vessel Keth Morai during trans-dimensional phase transition, Security Chief Kexmore reported during an emergency fleet briefing. Subject was armed with a projectile weapon constructed entirely from our own quantum processors and dimensional stabilization components. When fired, this primitive kinetic device somehow phases through our 17-dimensional barriers and impacts targets with exponentially increased momentum while remaining undetectable to our security sensors until the moment of impact. Deal. The captured human operative revealed under interrogation that the infiltration attempts weren't desperate random actions, but part of a systematic intelligence gathering operation that demonstrated comprehensive understanding of Silicon collective technology and operational procedures. Human observers had apparently mapped the entire fleet's defensive systems using nothing but external observation and mathematical analysis. How did your species acquire detailed technical specifications for our trans-dimensional vessel configurations and quantum security protocols? Nexaval demanded during the recorded interrogation session. We watched your ships phase in and out of normal space-time, the human replied with unnerving calm. Your dimensional transition patterns create detectable gravitational ripples that follow mathematical progressions. Once we understood the basic equations, we could predict your materialization coordinates and security rotation schedules. Impossible. Our dimensional phase algorithms are generated by 17-dimensional quantum probability matrices. 3-dimensional mathematics cannot analyze trans-dimensional phenomena. Your 17-dimensional matrices project their operations into 3-dimensional space through gravitational field fluctuations. The human continued with disturbing precision. Those fluctuations create harmonic patterns that any human physicist could map using basic wave analysis techniques. Your security is only invisible if you don't know how to look for the right mathematical signatures. Nexaval's interrogation team spent months verifying the human's mathematical claims and discovered that the primitive human was completely correct. The Silicon Collective's most advanced technology had been compromised by 3-dimensional mathematical analysis techniques that their own scientists had never considered because they were too sophisticated to think in such basic terms. Human operative demonstrates technical analysis capabilities that exceed our central computational systems. Nexaval's final assessment report concluded with obvious implications for fleet security. Using biological neural networks and primitive mathematical tools, the subject has reverse-engineered technology that required our civilization 50 millennia to develop. The level of intuitive engineering understanding displayed by this primitive species represents an unacceptable strategic threat to Silicon collective technological superiority. The Silicon collective evacuation included the humiliating loss of 3 research vessels that human operatives had somehow convinced to defect by demonstrating more efficient design modifications for their own technology. The 6th wave marked the Council's transition to indirect warfare strategies focused on exploiting internal human divisions. The social engineers of HFY specialized in amplifying species' existing tribal conflicts to create self-destructive civil wars that eliminated target populations without requiring direct military intervention. Their manipulation techniques had successfully destroyed 63 civilizations by turning their social systems against themselves. Master Engineer Yildiz had toppled entire galactic sectors by identifying and exploiting natural fault lines in species social organization, resource competition, ideological differences, territorial disputes, and genetic tribal divisions. Human society, with its obvious fragmentation based on geography, skin pigmentation variations, religious belief systems, and economic resource distribution, appeared to be an ideal candidate for social manipulation warfare. Homo sapiens displays classic civilization fragmentation patterns that are vulnerable to standard manipulation protocols. Yildiz reported to the Council's Infiltration Strategic Command. Multiple competing ideological frameworks, significant resource inequality, territorial boundary disputes, and religious conflicts provide optimal leverage points for social destruction. Historical analysis indicates this species has been engaged in continuous internal warfare throughout their recorded history. Standard manipulation amplification should achieve complete societal collapse within 2 generations maximum. The social engineers began their work with characteristic subtlety, carefully amplifying existing human conflicts through strategically placed disinformation campaigns, economic manipulation operations, and resource scarcity engineering designed to push moderate population groups toward violent confrontation. They fed contradictory intelligence reports to opposing military factions, manipulated commodity markets to create artificial shortages that generated civil unrest, and introduced ideological extremism designed to radicalize previously peaceful political movements. For the first time in their 1,000-year campaign against Earth, the Council's strategy appeared to be working according to plan. Human societies began experiencing increased social tensions, economic instability, and political polarization that matched historical patterns preceding civilizational collapse. Wars erupted between nations that had maintained peaceful relationships for decades. Religious fundamentalism spread across multiple continents, creating new sources of intergroup conflict. Economic inequality reached critical levels that historically preceded complete social breakdown. The social engineers congratulated themselves on finally discovering humanity's fatal weakness. They were too divided to unite against external threats. Then, something unprecedented occurred in the history of galactic warfare. The humans figured out they were being manipulated. Subject species has developed systematic resistance to standard social engineering manipulation protocols. Yildiz reported to the Council with growing amazement and concern. They appear to be actively identifying and countering our manipulation attempts through what they call media literacy education and critical thinking instruction programs. Human educational systems are teaching propaganda recognition techniques and information verification methodologies as standard curriculum components. Human societies were not just resisting the manipulation, they were learning from it and becoming stronger. Educational institutions began teaching disinformation analysis as a basic life skill. Citizens developed informal networks for cross-referencing suspicious information sources. Independent fact verification became a cultural value rather than just an academic exercise. Most troubling, humans began treating their own internal conflicts as potential vectors for external manipulation. Impossible development in human social psychology detected, Yildiz's field operatives reported during the operation's final phase. Instead of allowing artificially amplified conflicts to destroy their social cohesion, human groups are using conflict as a training mechanism for developing resistance to manipulation. They appear to be deliberately creating controlled internal disagreements to practice identifying and neutralizing external influence operations. The most disturbing discovery came when humans began implementing their own social engineering techniques against the infiltrators themselves. Counterintelligence operations fed false information to social engineer operatives, creating artificial intelligence networks that convinced the aliens they were successfully manipulating human society when they were actually being systematically misdirected by human deception specialists. Emergency extraction required for all Plex High personnel in Sol 3 operational theater, Yildiz transmitted in her final report to the Council. Confirmed infiltration of our command structure by human counterintelligence assets. Unknown number of our operatives have been psychologically compromised through manipulation techniques we cannot identify or understand. The humans have somehow convinced our own agents that they are human double agents working to protect Earth from alien influence rather than Plex High specialists working to destroy human civilization. The psychological manipulation was so sophisticated that the compromised Plex High operatives required extensive mental rehabilitation before they could remember their original identities, species affiliation, and mission parameters. Species demonstrates social engineering capabilities that exceed our operational effectiveness by over 200%. Yildiz's classification summary concluded with obvious implications for future operations. Human society appears to be evolutionarily optimized for detecting and neutralizing external social manipulation. Cognitive and cultural structures suggest systematic preparation for social warfare techniques they have never encountered. Recommendation: permanent suspension of social engineering operations against Sol 3. This species represents an unacceptable counterintelligence threat to Plex High operational security. The seventh wave represented the Council's ultimate escalation. Complete stellar system elimination. If Earth could not be conquered through any conventional means, it would be removed from existence entirely. The Star Killers of Nethvak possessed weapons capable of triggering stellar collapse, transforming Earth's own sun into a weapon of mass destruction that would sterilize the entire solar system while making the destruction appear natural. Fleet Annihilator Korathax viewed the mission as a mercy killing for a species that had proven too dangerous to exist in proximity to civilized galactic society. This species has demonstrated capabilities that threaten the stability of established galactic order, he declared, before the final assault fleet departed for Sol system. They adapt too quickly, learn too efficiently, and resist too effectively. We will end their threat permanently by removing their entire stellar environment from the galactic equation. The operation will appear as spontaneous stellar instability, leaving no evidence of artificial intervention. Udud, the Star Killer fleet, approached Sol from 4 different trans-dimensional vectors simultaneously, ensuring that no possible human detection system could provide advance warning of their arrival. Their stellar destabilization devices were charged and ready to trigger immediate solar collapse through carefully controlled gravitational resonance amplification. The entire operation was designed to last less than 6 hours from initiation to completion. The fleet materialized in Sol system's outer orbital regions, expecting to find primitive humans frantically attempting to detect the invisible approach of their executioners. Instead, they found something that violated every assumption about human technological capabilities. Humanity was waiting for them with comprehensive defensive preparations. Unidentified vessels detected in trans-dimensional approach vectors came the immediate transmission from Earth's surface on frequencies that should have been impossible for humans to access. We've been tracking your gravitational signature distortions for the past 18 months using modified radio telescope arrays and quantum resonance detection grids. Your stealth technology produces detectable anomalies in the quantum vacuum fluctuation patterns. Please respond with your intentions, or we will assume hostile action and respond accordingly." "Impossible!" Korathax screamed at his fleet's sensor operations specialists. "Our approach vectors are completely undetectable using three-dimensional technology. No primitive civilization can perceive trans-dimensional navigation signatures." "Sir," his chief science officer reported with obvious terror, "the humans appear to have developed four-dimensional detection arrays using modified electromagnetic telescope systems and crystalline matrix quantum processors. Their gravitational anomaly detection accuracy it's exceeding the precision of our own sensor technology by measurable margins." But the humans had accomplished far more than just detecting the approaching Starkiller fleet. Earth's surface was covered with an intricate network of gravitational field generators, quantum resonance amplifiers, and stellar radiation directors, all constructed from relatively primitive materials, but designed with sophisticated understanding of advanced astrophysics principles that surpassed even Starkiller engineering capabilities. "How did they know?" Korathax demanded of his intelligence division. "How did they know we would attempt stellar destabilization? How did they develop countermeasures for weapons they've never encountered? How did they acquire the technical knowledge required to build gravitational manipulation systems using primitive industrial technology?" The answer came not through intercepted communications or intelligence analysis, but through direct demonstration of human capabilities. Earth's defensive network activated simultaneously across the planet's surface, creating a precisely coordinated gravitational field that perfectly countered the Starkiller weapon's stellar destabilization effect. More incredibly, the human system redirected the destabilization energy back toward the attacking fleet itself. "Our weapons are being turned against us," Korathax's tactical operations officer reported in absolute panic. "The humans have somehow created a gravitational reflection matrix that turns our own stellar manipulation technology back on our ships. The destabilization field is targeting our vessels instead of their sun. Fleet structural integrity compromised across all operational units." The Starkiller fleet found themselves trapped within their own weapon system, caught in gravitational distortions that threatened to tear their vessels apart at the molecular level. Emergency retreat protocols required abandoning nearly half their advanced equipment, including classified stellar manipulation technology that the humans immediately salvaged and began systematically analyzing for reverse engineering applications. Emergency evacuation completed with 43% equipment loss, Korathax reported to the Council in his mandatory resignation transmission. Species demonstrates pre-existing knowledge of stellar engineering principles that exceed their supposed technological development level by several millennia. Their defensive capabilities suggest access to information sources beyond their planetary isolation. Recommendation: permanent classification of Sol 3 as absolute quarantine zone. This species represents an existential threat to established galactic order. Until the Starkiller defeat represented the Council's most humiliating military failure in recorded history. An entire fleet of the galaxy's most advanced weapons had been neutralized by primitives using modified radio telescopes and industrial equipment. But it was the aftermath documentation that revealed the truly terrifying implications of humanity's defensive capabilities. Post-engagement analysis of human technology samples reveals impossible engineering sophistication. The Council's Technical Assessment Division reported 6 months after the Starkiller evacuation. Human gravitational manipulation systems demonstrate efficiency ratings that exceed our own technology by 37%. While using manufacturing techniques that should be incapable of producing such precision. They have somehow solved fundamental problems in gravitational field harmonics that our best scientists have been working on for 3,000 years. More disturbing, were the intelligence reports about human reverse engineering capabilities. Within weeks of capturing star-killer technology, human research teams had not only understood the fundamental principles behind stellar manipulation, but had developed improvements that made the original designs obsolete. Human technological adaptation rate exceeds all known parameters. The technical analysis continued. They appear capable of understanding and improving upon technology that required our civilization millennia to develop. This level of engineering intuition suggests either access to advanced educational resources or evolutionary optimization for technological advancement that has no parallel in galactic history. Nethermore's archive contained 47 such reports, each documenting a different failure, each describing human capabilities that shouldn't have existed according to any known principles of technological or biological development. But it was the classified addendum files that revealed the most disturbing pattern underlying all these impossible defeats. Cross-species psychological analysis indicates systematic human preparation for advanced warfare scenarios. Read the Xenopsychology Evaluation Report, compiled after the 7th failed invasion. Human military development patterns suggest access to tactical information beyond their planetary experience. Combat adaptation rates, technological reverse engineering capabilities, and strategic planning sophistication all exceed baseline parameters by factors that cannot be explained through natural evolutionary processes. The pattern analysis was undeniable. Humans weren't just unusually good at warfare, they were specifically optimized for fighting exactly the types of battles that the Council's member species excelled at. Every human capability seemed designed to counter specific galactic military traditions. Veltari energy weapons, hegemony technological superiority, Mindweaver psychological warfare, modern biological attacks, silicon collective transdimensional technology, Plex High social manipulation, and star killer stellar engineering. Subject species appears to be evolutionarily designed for military adaptation against advanced galactic civilizations, the xenobiology assessment concluded. Genetic analysis suggests artificial enhancement, but no evidence of external genetic manipulation has been detected through comprehensive archaeological investigation. Natural selection pressure sufficient to produce these adaptation characteristics does not exist in the Sol system environment. Archaeological investigations had found no evidence of ancient alien intervention on Earth. No crashed spacecraft, no abandoned technology, no genetic markers indicating prehistoric manipulation by advanced civilizations. The humans had developed their impossible adaptive capabilities entirely through natural evolutionary processes, as if military evolution was built into their fundamental biological design. No external influence detected in human evolutionary history, the Archaeological Survey reported. Species development appears to be entirely indigenous to Sol 3 environment. However, adaptive characteristics suggest systematic preparation for specific types of warfare that do not exist in their natural environment. This represents an impossible evolutionary scenario that cannot be explained through conventional biological development models. The final classified document in Nethermore's archive bore the highest possible security classification, the personal seal of the Axiarch himself. The supreme authority of the Galactic Council had personally reviewed the Earth situation and reached conclusions that carried implications for the entire galactic community. Pattern analysis of human responses across 47 invasion attempts indicates systematic preparation for advanced warfare scenarios. The Axiarch's personal assessment stated with the authority of absolute certainty. This species has developed countermeasures for technologies they have never encountered, tactics for situations they have never experienced, and strategic thinking that anticipates threats that do not exist in their historical environment. Mathematical probability analysis indicates less than 0.0001% chance that these capabilities could develop naturally without specific preparation for galactic-level military conflict. Nethmore's compound eyes focused on the Axiarch's final conclusion with growing horror as the implications became clear. Conclusion. Humanity appears to have been deliberately engineered for the specific purpose of resisting galactic invasion attempts. Unknown agency has created a species optimized for neutralizing all known forms of advanced warfare. Recommend immediate investigation into possible external manipulation of human evolutionary development by unidentified advanced civilization. But the investigation reports told an even more disturbing story. There was no unknown advanced civilization manipulating human development. No external agency had created humanity as a weapon against galactic expansion. The humans had developed their impossible capabilities entirely on their own, through natural processes that violated every known principle of evolutionary biology. Comprehensive analysis of Sol system indicates no evidence of external technological intervention, the investigation summary concluded. Human development appears to be entirely indigenous. However, species characteristics suggest preparation for galactic-level warfare that should require advanced knowledge of galactic military capabilities. This represents an impossible scenario that cannot be resolved using current scientific understanding. Nethmore sat back in his archive chamber, mandibles clicking rapidly as he processed the implications of what he had discovered. 47 invasion attempts across 1,000 generations, each failure providing humanity with progressively more advanced information about galactic military capabilities. Each defeat had actually been a comprehensive education in advanced warfare techniques, giving humans systematic exposure to every form of combat that the galaxy's greatest civilizations had developed. The conspiracy wasn't that humans had hidden advantages in warfare. The conspiracy was that the invasions had never been invasions at all. Archive access code, Axiarch Override 77 Alpha Terminus. Nethmore whispered to his terminal, his voice trembling with the weight of growing realization. The deepest classified files opened, revealing documentation that only the Council's highest authority levels had been permitted to access for 9 centuries. Project Crucible, the systematic cultivation of a species capable of defending the galaxy against its greatest existential threat. Long-range deep space monitoring arrays have confirmed the approach of an extragalactic force designated Devourer Collective, the project initiation document revealed. Preliminary analysis indicates this force has already consumed 7 neighboring galaxies using advanced warfare techniques that incorporate every known form of military technology. Previous galactic civilizations have fallen because they specialized in single forms of warfare and could not adapt quickly enough to counter multi-vector attacks. The Devourers represented everything that the galactic community feared most, a civilization that had perfected every form of warfare simultaneously. They used technological superiority, biological weapons, psychological manipulation, social engineering, trans-dimensional attacks, and stellar destruction in coordinated campaigns that overwhelmed their targets through sheer diversity of assault methods. Devourer analysis indicates utilization of warfare techniques from 14 different technological traditions. The threat assessment continued. No single galactic civilization possesses defensive capabilities sufficient to counter their multi-vector assault methodology. Standard defensive doctrine proves inadequate against opponents capable of simultaneous attack using incompatible technological paradigms. The Council had realized that defeating the Devourers required something that had never existed in galactic history: a single species capable of adapting to all forms of advanced warfare simultaneously. Not specialists in individual combat techniques, but generalists capable of learning and countering any military technology they encountered. Project Crucible initiated to develop defensive capabilities sufficient for Devourer-class opposition, the classified documentation revealed. Earth designated as Crucible Prime, controlled cultivation environment for military adaptive evolution. Objective: creation of species-level adaptive capacity through systematic exposure to maximum warfare diversity. Project timeline: 1,000 generations. Estimated completion: Generation 1000. Every invasion of Earth had been carefully designed to teach humanity specific lessons about different forms of advanced warfare without causing extinction-level damage. The humans had never been victims of random alien aggression. They had been students in the most comprehensive military education program ever conceived, with each invasion serving as a carefully controlled training exercise. Phase 1. Technological Adaptation Training, the project documentation outlined. Veltari and hegemony forces will provide controlled exposure to energy weapons and technological superiority warfare. Success criteria: human development of technological reverse engineering capabilities and adaptive manufacturing techniques. Phase 2. Psychological warfare resistance training, the plan continued. Mindweaver specialists will provide controlled exposure to advanced psychological manipulation techniques. Success criteria: human development of mental defense protocols and counterintelligence capabilities. Phase 3. Biological defense training, the documentation detailed. Modern bioweapon specialists will provide controlled exposure to advanced biological warfare. Success criteria: human development of accelerated immune system adaptation and medical countermeasure capabilities. Each phase had been precisely calculated to push humanity to the edge of extinction without actually destroying them, forcing rapid adaptation while ensuring species survival. The seemingly random timing of invasions had actually followed a carefully orchestrated schedule, designed to allow humans sufficient recovery time between training exercises while maintaining continuous pressure for military evolution. Current status: Phase 7 completed ahead of schedule, the latest project update reported. Human adaptive capabilities exceed all projection models. Species demonstrates military evolution rate 400% above estimated parameters. Recommendation: advance to Phase 8 immediately. Devourer advanced scouts detected entering galactic periphery. Nethmore realized with growing horror that every species in the galaxy, including his own people, had been unknowing participants in humanity's military education program. The Council had deliberately sacrificed the pride, resources, and sometimes lives of their finest warriors to create the one species capable of defending against galactic extinction. Devourer fleet composition analysis indicates utilization of warfare techniques from all 7 previously consumed galaxies, the threat assessment update revealed. Estimated time to core system contact: 47 years. All galactic civilizations will require defensive capabilities equivalent to Crucible Prime specifications for species survival. D. The humans weren't just adapted for warfare, they were the galaxy's secret weapon, forged in the crucible of controlled conflict and tempered by deliberate adversity. Every defeat they had inflicted on galactic forces had actually been a victory for the entire galactic community, preparing their ultimate defenders for the real war that was coming. Project Crucible Phase 8. Full disclosure and integration, the final documentation outlined. Inform Crucible Prime of their true purpose and integrate human defensive capabilities with Galactic Defense Network. Estimated timeline for Devourer arrival: 47 years. Human defensive training must be extended to all galactic species for collective survival. As Nethmore prepared to transmit the activation codes that would inform humanity of their true purpose, he couldn't escape the ultimate irony of the situation. The species that everyone had tried to conquer would now be asked to save everyone who had tried to conquer them. The humans, who had been taught to fight against galactic civilization, would now be asked to fight for it. Incoming priority transmission, Deep Space Monitoring Station Terminus 7, his communications array announced with urgent priority indicators. Devourer advanced scouts have entered Outer Galactic Rim, the transmission reported. Multiple contact signatures detected approaching from extragalactic vector 247. Estimated composition: technological superiority vessels, biological warfare platforms, psychological manipulation ships, social engineering infiltrators, trans-dimensional attack craft, and stellar destruction systems. All warfare types confirmed present in advance formation. The real war was beginning. Crucible Prime activation authorized. Nethmore transmitted to Earth's surface. Project Crucible disclosure initiated. Humanity, your training is complete. Your real enemy approaches. Galactic survival depends on your success. The response from Earth came within minutes, broadcast on every communication frequency simultaneously. "We know," came the simple human reply. "We've been watching them approach for 3 years. We're ready." Nethmore realized that even their ultimate revelation had not surprised humanity. They had somehow known all along that their invasions were training exercises, that their defeats were lessons, that their evolution was being guided toward a specific purpose. The humans had been conscious participants in their own military education, accepting each challenge as preparation for something greater. The 47 failed invasions hadn't been failures at all. They had been the most successful military training program in galactic history, creating the one species capable of saving everyone else. As the first Devourer scout ships crossed into the galaxy's outer rim, Nethmore understood the final truth. Humanity hadn't just been trained to fight the Devourers, they had been specifically engineered to defeat them. The galaxy's greatest war was about to begin, and humanity was ready. The 1,000-year conspiracy had created the galaxy's salvation.